I had always thought of Professor Park as a cold and distant man. He was my professor at the university where I was pursuing my master's degree in literature. I had heard stories about his strict grading system and his unapproachable demeanor. So, when I found out that I would be working closely with him on my thesis, I was more than a little nervous. The first time I met him, I was struck by his piercing brown eyes and his blonde hair. He was dressed in a tweed jacket and a crisp white shirt, and he carried himself with an air of authority. I introduced myself and he gave me a curt nod before launching into a detailed explanation of his expectations for my thesis. Over the next few weeks, I spent countless hours in Professor Park's office, poring over books and manuscripts and discussing my ideas with him. At first, our interactions were strictly professional, but as time went on, I began to notice little things about him. The way his face softened when he laughed at one of my jokes, or the way he would linger over a cup of coffee when we took a break from our work. One day, as we were discussing a particularly difficult passage in a medieval manuscript, I looked up and caught Professor Park staring at me. He quickly looked away, but not before I saw the warmth in his eyes. I felt my heart skip a beat, and I knew in that moment that I had feelings for him. But I was also acutely aware of the power dynamic between us. He was my teacher, my professor, and I was just a lowly graduate student. I didn't want to do anything to my academic career, so I kept my feelings to myself. As the weeks turned into months, our relationship continued to evolve. We would spend hours talking about everything from literature to politics to our personal lives. I began to see him not just as a professor, but as a person, someone with hopes, fears, and dreams just like me. One evening, as we were working late in his office, I accidentally knocked over a stack of books. I bent down to pick them up, and as I did, I felt Professor Park's hand on my back. I looked up, and our eyes met. He looked down at me, and I saw the warmth in his eyes again. Without thinking, I leaned in and him. He hesitated for a moment before me back. It was a gentle tentative, the kind of that speaks volumes without saying a word. We pulled away, and I looked up at him, my heart pounding in my chest. "I'm sorry," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "Don't be," he replied, his voice equally soft. "I've been wanting to do that for a long time." We spent the rest of the night talking and laughing, our earlier awkwardness forgotten. As the moon rose high in the sky, casting a soft glow through the office windows, the tension between us grew palpable. Professor Park stood up, and the room seemed to shrink as he approached me. His eyes searched mine, looking for confirmation, and when he found it, he took my hand in his. His sent a jolt of electricity through me, and I knew that I wanted this just as badly as he did. He led me to the couch and we sat down. The from his body was like a warm blanket, and I could feel my cheeks flushing. He leaned in again, and this time our was anything but gentle. His were firm and demanding, and I responded eagerly, my hands finding their way into his hair. They grew deeper, more passionate, as our danced together in a silent conversation that had been years in the making. We were lost in each other, the outside world fading away. It was a moment of pure, unbridled passion, and for the first time in my life, I felt truly alive. Over the next few weeks, our relationship blossomed into something beautiful. We would meet in secret, sneaking off the quiet corners of the university or taking long walks in the park. We talked about everything, our hopes, our dreams, our fears. It was a connection that went beyond academics, beyond our roles as professor and student. But as much as we cared for each other, we both knew that our relationship was fraught with risk. If anyone found out, it could ruin both of our careers. So we made a pact to keep our relationship a secret, to cherish the time we had together, and to let go when the time came. As the semester came to a close, I began to realize that the time was drawing near. I had completed my thesis and I was preparing to graduate. Professor Park and I both knew that our time together was limited, and we made the most of it. On the day of my graduation, I walked across the stage with a sense of pride and accomplishment. I knew that I had worked hard for my degree, but I also knew that I had made a connection that would stay with me for the rest of my life. After the ceremony, I made my way to Professor Park's office. He was waiting for me, a small bouquet of flowers in his hand. "Congratulations," he said, his voice filled with emotion. I took the flowers and smiled at him. "Thank you," I replied, my voice equally emotional. We stood there for a moment, looking at each other, knowing that this was goodbye. I felt a lump form in my throat, and I knew that I was about to cry. "Hey," Professor Park said, taking my hand. "It's okay. We knew this day would come." I nodded, my eyes filling with tears. "I know," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. We stood there for a few more moments, holding hands, saying goodbye without saying a word. And then, with one last, we let go. As I turned to leave, he called out to me. "Wait, I want to tell you something." I turned back, my heart pounding. "What is it?" "I've been thinking a lot about us," he said, his voice steady. "I don't want this to be the end. I want us to continue our relationship." My heart soared at his words. "But how? What about our careers?" "We'll find a way," he said, his eyes full of determination. "You take it slow but careful, but I can't imagine my life without you." I felt a smile spread across my face. "I can't imagine my life without you either." We embraced, holding each other tightly. In that moment, I knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, we would face them together. Years later, as I stood in our shared home, watching the sunset with Jimin by my side, I reflected on our journey. Our love had defied the odds, and we had built a life together filled with joy, passion, and mutual respect. "Do you remember the day we first met?" Jimin asked, wrapping his arm around me. I smiled, leaning into his embrace. "Of course I do. I was so nervous." "And now look at us," he said, his voice filled with wonder. "We've come so far." "Yes, we have," I agreed, feeling a deep sense of contentment. "And I wouldn't change a thing." As the sun dipped below the horizon, we stood there, holding each other, knowing that our love had truly stood the test of time.